I'm Norm Stamper. I live on Orcas Island in the San Juan Islands off the mainland of Washington State. I was a police officer for 34 years, 28 in San Diego, and 6 as the Seattle Police Chief, 94 to 2000. Well, it's a 30-chapter book, and it deals with everything from police reform, the desperate need to radically reform American law enforcement. It deals with issues like domestic violence and the death penalty and the police culture, racism, sexism, homophobia within the ranks. Once again, a variety of topics. The one that clearly has generated the most interest is my chapter on the drug war. The conclusion, not surprising to people who know me, is that we need to end prohibition. We need to legalize, regulate, tax and control all drugs in this country if we are to, in fact, bring a successful conclusion to a miserably failed effort to control drugs in this country. Well, I was doing a reading in the state of Washington, in Olympia, as I recall, or Tacoma, and Jack Cole, the executive director, happened to be there. I didn't know him from Adam, but he was in Seattle to do some work on behalf of law enforcement against prohibition. He came up to me after the reading, corrected me on a couple of mistakes that I had made in my chapter on the book, but said how deeply appreciative he was that I took the stance that I did against drugs, and asked me to join LEAP. I did a little bit of research, didn't need to do an awful lot before I was satisfied that it's an extraordinary organization of police officers, past and present, prison wardens, probation and parole officers, judges, DEA agents, FBI agents, Homeland Security agents, and probably a couple of other occupations thrown in. All criminal justice professionals committed to ending the war on drugs. Go back to that period of time, which is 1966, and several years before Richard Nixon declared officially war on drugs. And it wasn't, of course, that we didn't make narcotics arrests in those days. We did. But it was mostly for marijuana possession, and frankly, at that time, a seed or a stem represented or constituted grounds for a felony arrest. And given the pecking order of police departments and the priorities we attach to the various offenses, if a crime is a felony, that's a bigger time offense, and police officers like to position themselves as good cops, promote themselves into detective positions or higher levels of authority, and so there was a rush to make these physical custody arrests for tiny amounts of marijuana. I can offer a couple of very critical principles to understand and to adhere to in the event of a physical custody arrest. On those occasions when somebody is actually hooked up, put in the back seat of a police car and driven to jail, it's important, number one, to know your rights, to insist that your rights be upheld by police officers. And I think it's also vital to say that you don't want to upset a police officer, certainly not unnecessarily, even as you exercise your rights as an American. I had a wonderful occasion in Seattle to work a couple of times with Johnnie Cochran. This was a couple of years before his death, and certainly before my retirement in 2000. But he spoke to a huge crowd of African-American youth, most of them, I'd say, average age 14. And one of the things that he said when it was his turn to speak, the two of us gave basically keynote speeches to this gathering, is this: if the police stop you, cooperate with them, follow their instructions, do not mouth off, give them any lip, be respectful to the police officers. If a police officer tells you to get out of the car, get out of the car. If a police officer tells you to spread eagle yourself in the roadway, spread eagle yourself. If the police officer asks you, on the other hand, to do something that you know is unlawful, express your knowledge of that illegal search and seizure, for example. But his basic thrust was, and I think the kids were beginning to say, is this the real Johnnie Cochran? Is this the guy that I thought I knew? as a defender of our civil liberties. And indeed he was, because what he said at the end is, cooperate with the police, understand the police have a hard job to do, understand that they don't know you, that you know that they're a police officer, but they don't know you. But here's the punchline. If they abuse you in any way, if they violate your civil liberties, call me. And his message was real, simple, and clear. And that is, you're dealing with people who are in uniforms, wearing badges, and who have firearms and other weapons at their disposal. And what you don't want to do is get into any kind of an adversarial contest unnecessarily. It was a rather jaw-dropping presentation, not because I didn't and many others in the room didn't know what his message was. We've seen it, we've heard it before. He's a true believer in the war on drugs. He believes that, you know, some wonderful combination of law enforcement and control along with prevention and treatment is the answer to the drug problem, which means he doesn't get it. He just truly does not understand that as long as prohibition is the foundation of U.S. drug policy, and U.S. drug policy being obviously having tentacles out to the rest of the globe, we are the generals, if you will, in the war on drugs, that we will 30 years from now be having the same conversation unless we undertake fundamental reform of American drug laws. But what was really jaw-dropping for me and just breathtaking in its scope was his apparent belief that he could convince this audience, an audience of very well-informed, very experienced drug policy reformers, that his way was the right way. He was only booed a couple of times. He heard a chorus of no's periodically. Here and there was a sissing sound, that sort of thing. But the bottom line was he was in hostile territory, and he made no headway at all. The one hope, and it's a long shot, is that he really means it when he says, convince me I'm wrong and I'll change. Well, I think he got plenty of evidence on the occasion of his speech to the Drug Policy Alliance conference to the effect that he is wrong, and why, and how. So we can only hope that he's a man of his word.
Law enforcement against prohibition. These men and women have served in the trenches of the drug war as prosecutors, judges, cops, guards, and wardens. They have seen firsthand the utter futility of our policy and now work together to end drug prohibition. Please visit leap.cc.